You're welcome.
Okay, moving on to B, the Crosse project, table from last month's meeting. Do we have anybody from the president's office here for the lacrosse project specifically?
I see Mike B conference room is on there, but they're muted if he's talking.
Okay, did I do, okay, Mike, yes.
Yes, we don't have anybody physically in the room from Office of the President, but I can certainly speak to this if you like.
Yes, I'd appreciate that, thank you.
You are welcome. In the packet for today's meeting, a PowerPoint presentation has been provided. Does everybody have a copy of that? Okay.
It is in the packet, I have a copy, but I think everybody does.
Okay. If you care to review the PowerPoint presentation with me, I can certainly go over that.
Okay. Now, is this the same one from last month? Is the same as the videos that have been circulating?
No, this is a separate PowerPoint presentation that was prepared by myself and Mr. Ryan Crane when he was the interim treasurer.
Okay. Okay, I've got mine up. I hope everybody else does. Thanks. Go ahead.
Okay. To begin on the PowerPoint presentation, we have our title slide and then slide number 1 following the title slide, just to illustrate what is envisioned for the River Point district. So that is just essentially that's an artist's rendering of the proposed area. Final layout is ultimately something that would need to be worked out. On your second page is the overview of the River Point district, and this is just a basic snapshot to identify where the property is located. So that is just off of this is just off of the main downtown area, just north of downtown, and it is at the confluence of the Mississippi, Black River, and La Crosse rivers. So the area in and of itself is while it is a total of 65 acres for the River Point district, the nation in this particular instance would only be looking to utilize anywhere between 4 to potentially 6 acres for potential development. And the development that we would be researching for additional development in working to prepare an official project charter ties in with the theme of the River Point district, which is to add additional professional offices, additional retail businesses, additional residential units for the La Crosse area. And on a high-level overview provided by the initial developer for the River Point district, they are scheduling approximately 800 residential units and multiple business locations of varying purposes. And on the next page, it goes on to show that there is support at the state level for redeveloping the River Point district. As the city of La Crosse has received support from Wisconsin DNR and Department of Transportation. The initial goal for the River Point district is to complete the phase 1 of grading and erosion control to ultimately support development that would withstand the 100-year floodplain. In future phase iterations, the goal is to install necessary utilities to support the district and its development. And that would be sanitary sewer, water mains, sewer water, and roadway improvements. The next page after that, you can see the area with aerial images to approximate the entirety of the area. There's one illustration that shows kind of a draft land use type of picture. And the nation's interest in this particular area is the second section away from the Mississippi River. And that's identified as commercial land use zone. And moving forward toward innovation and expansion on that particular slide, I was able to highlight that the nation predominantly relies on NPE funding generated by business revenues, and that we already know. We also operate through our successful applications of numerous grants that host a wide variety of program uses for the nation. In those particular areas, it's important to note that while we do receive revenue from gaming and retail, that money isn't necessarily new. That money tends to be status quo year after year. We do what we can to try to increase revenue at each of our properties on a daily basis. So that goes without saying. But largely, the net revenues coming into the nation always remains relatively static. And introducing the Crosse River project is, I think, a very solid approach for the nation in terms of understanding and practically implementing different business opportunities that allow us to focus in other business industry sectors, whether it be retail or expanded hotel operations or expanded dining operations. So, in there, we have the propensity to recognize new money or new cash inflow for the nation.
Good morning, good afternoon, please. Apple plant starters in the upstairs atrium on the table are free. Again, there are apple plant starters in the upstairs atrium on the table for free. Thank you.
Using this model from the La Crosse River Point District project, we very likely, in all likelihood, we could use this model for development potential outside of just La Crosse. We have Beloit that is still in the discussion phases and further developments, but the design plan overall for the River Point District property is a mixed-use, multi-purpose facility. So that, in and of itself, is part of the innovation and expansion that has been discussed, with previous legislative bodies for economic diversification. Following that, on innovation and expansion, we already can understand and have data to support, efforts in this direction, showing that of the greater La Crosse area, we have approximately 125,000 residents in the immediate area. And of that total population, essentially 59% of that population is of relative working age. Further breaking that down, you can see of that 125,000 population, there is roughly 51,000 housing units that are currently available. So that does show a gap in housing for the greater La Crosse area. And to break that down more definitively, and depending on the size and number of units available in this potential development, we can see an average of $1,400 to $1,500 for market rate rental for each of those units. Moving forward, out of some of those statistics on the financing and operations considerations, that would be the next slide. It is our intent to explore all funding options as detailed as we possibly can, so as to decrease the financing burden on the nation. And some of the things that we should be looking at include opportunity zones and tax incremental funding, so TIF districts, and new market tax credit programs, and potentially other sources of funding such as grants. So in there, there are some things that need to be worked out yet, and that is any move on part of the nation to place this property into trust. And I don't know if Matthew Arriaga is on the line, okay. So Matthew's in the audience with us today and can explain some of the issues involving financing and timing of deed of trust.
Good morning, everyone. When we're talking about entering into certain programs and obligations, especially when you place those type of liens and encumbrances on the property, it can create some difficulty when submitting a deed of trust application. Usually these programs that the nation's most familiar with are the managed forest law programs. The nation purchased a number of properties from Plum Creek, and these properties were in these state programs when the nation purchased them. So when we tried to submit a deed of trust application, the Bureau of Indian Affairs at that time said that they wouldn't take on that obligation of accepting the property in the trust status under those programs. So I'm not too familiar on how the Bureau would react if the nation were to acquire title and submit an application under these other programs, these other opportunities that you have. So it might not be the best idea, especially if the nation were to acquire or achieve trust status interest in the property, and then subsequently try to attempt to enroll into the program. So, it's a possibility. Traditionally, we didn't look at like business ventures for a deed of trust application, I guess, outside of Little Lake itself. A lot of our applications are conservation, supportive, residential. So if you have a first time taking on this type of deed of trust application, there are certain requirements. Or if we're submitting to have it under a business land use type that's being imposed, that wouldn't necessarily be there if we were submitting for residential or remaining the same land use. The environmental portion of it is probably going to be expansive if the property hasn't been developed yet. So kind of like what we expected with the Lloyd application, where it's a huge environmental impact statement. People this being close to the state boundary again, you know, you might lead over to Minnesota and some of those other counties where everyone has an opportunity to make comment on that, things like that. So timing, if the nation were to submit an application is key. And, you know, the applications do delay development as once the environmental has been completed. We usually don't try to encumber or break ground on the property because that might trigger that whole process for break-in. So that's all I have to share about that in the trust portion.
So, you know, being one of the more critical aspects of any development project for the nation, financing is key, and the trust process is key, and we do see the ties between the two. I can understand some apprehension to move forward on any particular type of development on part of the nation as we are slowly coming out of this pandemic. So that actually does lead into my second to the last slide of next steps and questions. While today I am not asking for an intergovernmental agreement with the city of La Crosse, what I am asking for is initial authorization to continue moving forward to work on developing our complete project charter and work towards developing what would eventually become an intergovernmental agreement with the city of La Crosse. Knowing that we do have some financing options available to us by way of tax incremental funding or new market tax credits or any number of approach considerations to include working with organizations like the Mississippi River Regional Plan Commission and some of the funding opportunities that they've got and the networking that also could accompany with that. The more important aspect that does relate to a recent D2 motion to not move forward with any development without having a project plan, marketing plan, and environmental assessment completed. I would like to identify that the primary developer for the River Point District, Wired Properties is their name, has a lot of that information already completed. They have invested in that and funded that work to be completed. So we do have market potential information. We do have different financing options that could be utilized in that document. They do have a completed environmental assessment, so that work is largely completed. We would, however, need information like that in order to develop an official project charter for the nation before we would be able to reintroduce that back to this body and eventually full legislature in order to move forward on any sort of intergovernmental agreement and continue development on the project. As part of our project charter, it is helpful to note that we are going to be, assuming we can move forward on the project, providing a definitive scope of operations for the project. We would be providing information to work through any land considerations, whether it be initial purchase, development of the land, the via trust process, things like that. And we would be providing also a complete finance model and plan that utilizes market and economic data and demographic data. As part of the project charter, we also would have an express timeline to show how the project would actually work out through its initial planning, on through development, and any type of opening and operation sustainment thereafter. We also would be discussing in that document the sustainability of the project. how that would be managed, you know, through the nation, what departments would, you know, need to do in order to sustain that operation, whether it be through HHCDA, housing, any combination thereof, how the property would actually be managed, you know, any tie-ins with the labor department and workforce development, and also working through any assumptions in order to understand how to more effectively move through the project. That would be about it. At present, if there are any questions, I would be more than welcome to take those.
Do we have any questions for Mike Rave?
Madam Chair, this is Sarah.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Good morning, Mike. My question is, are these going to be tribal housing or just for the public?
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
In response to that, you know, those are some assumptions that we need to work through. But right now, we are looking at having a combination of tribal housing and non-tribal housing on that particular property.
Okay, thank you.
What that ratio looks like has yet to be determined.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, have you looked at other properties and other developments in the La Crosse area or elsewhere?
Yes, I have taken a look at some other property developments similar to this, both in Oshkosh, Madison, Milwaukee, and Ryan, Mr. Crane has also looked at similar properties in the La Crosse area itself.
For this particular development to take place in?
Mr. Crane has looked at properties in the La Crosse area that would be similar to this one, yes.
Okay, have you looked at other locations for this development to take place on?
Within the La Crosse area, there have been other sites that have been reviewed. I was not a part of that review. From my initial introduction to this particular project and looking at other areas of development, whether it be Whitmer, Crosse, Black River, Wisconsin Dells, Madison, and stemming from my previous experience in planning and development, it is my initial understanding and opinion that the La Crosse area is most suitable for this particular type of development, being that the demographics for Whitford and Crosse don't necessarily support this type of development as of yet. And given the entertainment type of venues that are offered in the Wisconsin Dells area, there really isn't that much call for professional offices in the immediate Wisconsin Dells area. But it is up there in terms of potential. For the Black River area, there is also potential for development of this type, but maybe not necessarily to this scale. The next feasible location that we could potentially endeavor with this type of development would actually be in the Beloit area.
Okay. Think there's a similar location in La Crosse that kind of has this type of like housing setup? Is that correct?
There is.
How is that one working out, and are there units built?
The conversations that I've had with Mr. Crane, those properties are working out very nicely for the city, and those are all occupied.
Okay. You talked about these other funding sources, like the opportunity zones. I'm always interested in those, and the new market tax credits. For the O-zone, that recovers a step, the comprehensive economic development strategy. Has that been shared with the nation yet?
To my understanding, that has not been shared with the nation yet.
Has it been performed? Who will be performing it, and when would it be completed?
I don't have that information readily available, but I can source an answer for you and get that back to you.
Okay, that'd be awesome. Do we have any other questions for Mike? Okay, I don't see any other questions. Thank you for your presentation, and we'll take your ask and consider it.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Mike. Have a nice day.
You too.
Okay, moving on. Number 1, investigative hearing. In the packet, we have the legislative minutes from February 23rd with the motion read in, requesting a hearing. So no action here today. That was referred to this committee. We'll take this under consideration. Just wanted to acknowledge that for the record. Oh, I'm sorry, I guess I combined 1 and 2. So, number 1, there's been a motion acknowledging point number 2, the D2 motion. So, stay tuned for a date on those. New business, nothing under new business.